Okay. Good day, everyone. Welcome to our second ever live session, the second ever live session of the Tech Sales Nexus community. If you are a member of the community, welcome once again. If you're not, you're still very much welcome. Today, we are talking about the role of AI in tech sales, and we have been able to reach out to Zoya to invite her here to be able to do justice to this conversation. We couldn't think of a better person to handle this conversation, and we're glad that Ty was able to make this possible and make this happen for us. Welcome, Zoya, and it's a pleasure to have you here once again. So please go ahead. The floor is all yours.
Wonderful. Well, I am so excited. I guess really quickly, let's do like a fun thing in the chat just to get folks talking. My style for things like this is definitely to have it be interactive, engaging, right? So feel free as we're going throughout to put questions in the chat because we do have time for, I know we have time for like a panel style Q&A. We might even have time for audience Q&A at the end. So if I say anything and it makes you think of a question, just go ahead and throw it in the chat. So to get started, let's put in the chat, what's your favorite food? Favorite food. Okay. I will be looking at it as you enter, and I guess I'll start. Let me go over to the chat. My favorite food, I love cheese. Anything with cheese.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll give it another minute. Okra soup. Ooh. I like soup. Know. You have to tell me.
Salad soup and pounded yam, actually, that's mine. That's a native of the Igbo tribe here in Nigeria. Oh, passion fruit, anything. Okay, that's for Ty.
A lot of soup. When I come to Nigeria, you all have to show me the different soup.
Definitely.
Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen. Feel free to keep entering those in there because I am dying to see them. And I'm gonna hit share and maximize my screen. And well, it's not quite maximized. Do you see like full screen, the whole thing? Do you see like my tabs? Okay, I'm gonna assume it looks good. Okay, great. Well, quick little about me. I did sales enablement at a company called Gong. I would say they're the world's leading revenue intelligence company. They were recently valued at $7.5 billion. At Gong, I ran Sales MBA, which is a program to get SDRs ready to actually transition to the AE role. Very exciting because it resulted in more than half of everyone who was in that program getting promoted. So I love teaching people both how to get into sales, how to be an elite SDR, how to go from SDR to AE, how to be a great AE. All of those things are kind of like in my wheelhouse and my favorites. I do also run a community that anyone is welcome to join. Here on this chat, I'll send a link after this. But in that community, we're just always talking about how to get better and improve your sales game. We have courses, we have events. Right now, they're all in the US. But again, maybe one day we will partner up and do one in Nigeria. I think that would be absolutely amazing. And I also host a podcast. And that podcast was rated top 10 best sales podcasts in 2024 by QuotaPath. And the name of the podcast is called Rep Matters. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I post every time we've got a new episode out, and you can find it on Spotify. You can find it and follow it on Apple Podcast as well. And just a little bit more about me before we get into like all the juicy details. I've been in tech sales for almost a decade, 9 years, going on 10. And I'm on the advisory board of Hyperbound. So that is an AI company that builds chatbots for salespeople. If you're in Uncapped, you actually have access to the Hyperbound AI for free, which is really awesome. It's a huge investment if your company were to buy it. And yeah, you can practice with AI, and we'll talk about some other use cases, but that's definitely one of them, conversational intelligence. So the guide for the discussion today, and again, feel free to put your comments and thoughts and questions in the chat as I'm going along. I'm actually not able to see it as I'm sharing my screen, so I will have to come back to it at the end. But just because I'm not responding to it, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to see it as soon as I minimize my screen share. So like I said, it's a discussion. It's not just going to be me presenting at you the whole time. But we will consider the ethical considerations for AI today. We'll explore the role of AI in this ever-evolving tech sales world. And I'll share my thoughts on what I think the future holds for technology and for AI. And as I mentioned, then we'll get to questions. So when it comes to ethical considerations for AI, like anything, any powerful force, powerful tool, it could be used for good, right, to build things, or it could be used in a way that is not as productive. I think it's always important, whether we're thinking about it from like a global political perspective to a company perspective to an individual perspective, to always think about the implications of using AI. If, you know, just making sure that we're actually using it for good. I'll give some examples of how AI sometimes can be a little bit complicated. The biggest one in my perspective is algorithmic bias. So with AI, it's only as good as the information that you feed it. And the reason I think this is a relevant topic to everyone, right, not just people who are in power, people who are making a lot of decisions for a lot of people, is because one of my predictions is that everyone is going to start engaging with AI a lot more, and everyone's going to start to build prompts. And I'll talk about that as we get closer to the end. But what that means is that you don't have to be an engineer coding your own AI in order to build something that can affect lots of people. So when it comes to algorithmic bias, like I said, the data that you feed it gets reflected back to you. So if people are feeding it, or if there's a data subset that's underrepresented, then it's going to be biased against that data subset. So we can just think about anytime we know underrepresentation, right? No matter, like, it could be anything. But for me, I live in the US, pretty diverse country, right? But tech sales is actually extremely not diverse. It's usually straight white dudes, right? And it's getting better over time. But if we were to feed, we are feeding AI right now, right? A lot of information about sales. That means the perspective is probably coming from like one voice that's a bit louder than other voices because it's represented a lot more, which means it's going to process recommendations and things of that sort. I'll give an example, like a very specific one. In 2016, Microsoft launched a chatbot, an AI chatbot. You might remember it was called Tay. Very exciting. It lived on Twitter, and it was around for, I think, exactly 16 hours before it had to be shut down. And the reason it had to be shut down was because we had trolls on Twitter who were like attacking it. And they were saying really nasty things. They were saying terrible, terrible things. And the bot became very cruel, became misogynistic, became racist because people were feeding it this. And so for that reason, Microsoft, again, speaking of ethical considerations, they were like, whoa, like we were not expecting this. This is not doing the world any good in this moment. And they shut it down. And then they later released a different one called Zoe after having more learnings and figuring out how they could protect the bot from learning inaccurate information and learning hateful information. So it's a really important concept to consider. If I give another example that's less intense, I'll say, but still very important. This one's a personal example. I was using an AI image generator, and I was looking for images of salespeople, and I typed it in, and it would provide me 5 images for free. And every single image that I found, it was like salespeople talking or salespeople networking or something like that. I just heard a ping. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay, it looks good. When I got the results back, I got 5 images, And all 4 of the images, well, I guess 5, right? But out of them, 4 of the images just had like 2 men, 4 men, 3 men. And there was one image that had 1 woman, and everybody looked exactly the same. I'm not going to say the creators by any means, right, were suggesting anything. I think the data that they found was just extremely biased, right? And so that's what we ended up getting from the bot. So then if we get into what's really changing and what's not, I think it's important to get really clear on those, because there's a lot of hyperbole, there's a lot of panic. When it comes to things that are changing, specifically in tech sales, and let's assume that we're addressing the ethical issues for good, some of the things that are going to be different, I think, in the future are going to be the way that leads are generated and qualified. So we're already seeing that, as I mentioned in my intro. I worked at Gong. There are other companies as well that help. There's a company called Mad Kudu that does automation right now, but like I think that's the perfect example of a company that is going to start to integrate different elements of AI to be able to automate who you should go after. So right now, salespeople spend a lot of time crafting their lead list, figuring out how to prioritize it, things of that nature. If you have a system that can automatically scan all of the data, like you, again, the prompts matter, you have to tell it what you're looking for, but you give it your ICP, basically, you give it your data set of all of your prospects, and it can start to rank it for you in terms of order of priority, or, you know, in terms of like who you should assign, not who, but which leads you should assign to your salespeople and to your SDRs in order to have them go after the lowest hanging fruit, basically. That's work that used to have to be done for the most part manually. Even conversations, if we're thinking about like past conversations, sometimes you have a prospect, you go forward for the meeting, or you even enter a sales cycle, and it doesn't move forward, right? It doesn't move to closed won. Before there was AI, a salesperson would have to go into the CRM, review all of the notes. Maybe there was call recording, maybe there wasn't. If there was call recording, great, they would listen to the recordings, and they would have to put together for themselves a point of view on what happened the last time that deal was live, especially if it was one they inherited, right? If they weren't actually the person who worked the deal. Now they can go into, again, Zoom is not Zoom. Gong is my reference point because I have had a lot of experience there. But with Gong, you could just go in, type into the account, you know, what was the reason this prospect didn't buy? Summarize the top 3 problems that this prospect had the last time we spoke. And that is just so much faster than what it used to be like. Forecasting as well is another one, and I'll get into that in another slide. But then there's also what's not changing. So the thing that is really important to note, I think, is that AI is not replacing salespeople. If anything, I think it's making very strong salespeople even more desirable, because now you're going to be able to do your job a lot better. And you're going to be competing with either people who are maybe overly reliant on AI, or you'll be competing with AI. Lots of people think AI is going to be making cold calls. I think like robo-dialers have been around for a while, like robocalls, right? Like you call the pharmacy, depending on which pharmacy you have, and there's someone on the other end, there's a bot on the other end that's giving you like prompts. It's very rigid, but that's been around for a long time. So if you work at a tech company that's expensive or complex or like in a very competitive market, it's not going to cut it, right? To just have a robot call a prospect who didn't ask for the call, they're going to get blocked. So I think it's really funny when people say things like that. Again, I'm not dismissing the use case entirely. I'm sure there's lots of great, probably like certain customer experience opportunities. Even I think the pharmacy one is a great example of a use case. But strong communication skills are always going to be important. I'd be shocked. I don't think in my lifetime I'll see people use AI to negotiate It's possible though, right? But in the near future, like in the next 10 years, I don't imagine having AI negotiate for businesses. I think that that will be people. So let's get into the improvements. I know I kind of went into some of them a little bit, but we'll get into it in a little more deep of a way. So research tools are so important to salespeople because they can really expedite how quickly you are able to search for and get information. We've got some companies listed here. Another one that's not listed, but I think probably at this point everyone knows ChatGPT. I love ChatGPT for research. I used to spend a lot of time doing account research. It's super important. And the things that I would look for were really impressive a lot of the time, depending on how I positioned them to the prospects that I was reaching out to. I would look for things like press releases. I would look for quotes from senior leaders. If they were a public company, I would look at their earnings reports. And sometimes I would scan them, right? Like you can command find and kind of get to like the parts of the report that you want to read, but then you still have to read all of it. And it just took a lot longer than going into ChatGPT and just having it give you a foundation, right? Like anytime you get a new book of business, depending on the industry, but this is something that's very common. People will break their book of business down into different industries. And if it's an industry that's new to them, they're going to start with really trying to gain as much knowledge as they can in that industry so that they can be a subject matter expert. That's one of the best ways to build a relationship, especially if you're selling a complex product or a product that is new to the market or a product that has a lot of competition in the market. People are going to be buying from you not because of the features of your product necessarily, but because they think that you will bring them value. They think that you will guide them the best through the buying journey and after the buying journey. And so it's going to be really important to be an expert in those industries. It used to be very hard. You'd have to read a lot. You'd have to, really get in the weeds. And it would take, main thing is time. Now you can get a vast amount of information in a much shorter amount of time. And you can use tools to help you analyze what's actually happening as well. Whereas you would have to find the information, consume all the information, and then, spin your wheels to figure out like exactly what it meant. For all of those parts, that is a great time to use AI, right? There's times to not use AI. For example, negotiating. Don't just make an AI bot and be like, okay, like I'm going to send that out and place with me to negotiate. But I honestly think in this area, there's no risk of over-indexing in AI when it comes to research. Then we've got AI for prospecting. So this is helpful. Companies like Apollo and ZoomInfo can actually analyze customer behavior, and they can help you identify buying signals. So again, I touched on prospect selection earlier, but that's going to be another key one. We've also seen chatbots. There was a while when like you would have to have an actual agent on the other side of those little like pop-ups when someone would, ask a question. But now you can have it 24/7 and you can have an AI bot do it. What's really great about it, right? We talked about the ethics. I think one of the things that comes into people's minds when they think about ethics is, but is it going to eliminate jobs? And I don't think so. I think people will have new jobs. So I used to work at a company a long time ago that was a messaging bot. So similar to this use case that we're talking about right now. And their whole purpose was to field questions to live agents. So instead of having live agents get on the call and handle every password reset question, which actually isn't a great use of someone's time who's on customer support. They could invest in more of their skills, deal with more complex problems, probably get paid more money to do, like really impactful work at the company versus having someone who's just there like answering, how to reset your password over and over. So they employed the bot to do things like that. They created different like pathways for people. And then if the bot wasn't able to solve it, if it was like a more complex, higher level issue, it would go to a person. And so I say all that to say, I don't actually think that AI, it's like the telephone, right? Like before the telephone, people were probably worried that it was going to ruin people's jobs, right? Like who's going to carry the mail? We used to have all these people delivering mail. But no one thinks about that anymore, right? Like all the people who used to be employed through the postal service, there's still people employed through the postal service. The people were wanting to be able to talk to people immediately, and it created all these new jobs, right? There's a whole telecommunications industry because of that. So I know I kind of went on a little bit of an aside, but it was something I didn't address in the ethics piece. I didn't talk about jobs. In the short term, maybe some people will find, oh, I used to, answer these email questions. Now I'm not doing that, but it'll create opportunity for an entire industry is my point there. Deal forecasting. So that's another one that Gong solves for. Another company that also solves for that is Clari. And this is a pretty big one, especially when we talk about not so much individual contributors, but if we're thinking about leadership, but actually ICs as well, right? Imagine you're closing a deal. You probably want to know, you want to be able to say with precision how likely it is that it's going to close, because that's going to impact your activities. How many more deals do you have to source if you only have a 30% close rate or probable close rate? Things like that. Then you'll want to, not just be guessing. The old world before AI was that you would write all your accounts down in a spreadsheet or maybe in a CRM and, just assume like based on gut, how you feel. You can actually look into signals now and see certain things that your company sales ops team has defined as like high propensity to buy, high intent, right? And if these things are happening in your sales cycles, then you can get a better picture of if it's going the right way. And if you see that you're not checking off those signals that the AI knows is important, then you can do something about it ahead of time. So that's that use case. Very helpful for sales leaders and for individual contributors. And there's so much more. So we'll get into the questions in a moment, but some takeaways, I'll let you read the screen, some that I'll just say off the top of my head as well. I kind of have two takeaways that I hope you have gotten from this. One, don't be afraid of AI. Like, I feel like even just 2 years ago, people were either afraid of it or they didn't trust that it was capable. Like, again, selling a product like Gong, we would call and say that our product was able to do all these things. And the person on the other end of the phone would sometimes say, like, how do I know? Like, everyone says they do AI, but it's not very good. I feel like we're beyond that. I feel like people are like, whoa, okay, like AI works. I'm impressed. Now the question is more like, which one do I choose? And am I intimidated by it? Like, do I even want to play around with it? So that's just, I hope you take that away. It's not as complicated as it seems. Like the other thing that I think has changed from even just 5 years ago, for the folks who were bought into AI, for people who did see its place in industries and in sales specifically, it was usually people who were very tech savvy, good at coding, and everyone else was kind of like, ooh, that's outside of my scope. But now there are products, right? There's a lot of products. There's actually a lot of competition in the market right now. And so anyone who's building AI products to help people in any industry, we'll talk about sales, right? The ones that will win are the ones that make it very accessible and easy to use. So just know that companies are spending a lot of time trying to figure out, like, how can we make it as easy as possible for someone to use this without having any coding experience? How can we make it so that people can just put in any prompt and be able to, like, get what it is that they want to get out of it? Again, without coding, they can build a bot without being a developer. So just know there's a lot of opportunity to actually get in there and start using it, no matter what your technical level is. And I will pass it back to you, hostesses.
Okay, thank you so much, Zoya. That was really insightful. I'm sure we have tons of questions. I'm happy Zoya was able to summarize everything. I know she has a lot to say, but she's also trying to keep the time so we can have enough time to ask questions. So if you have questions, please raise your hand up and we'll just let you speak. It's interactive, okay? You don't have to type in the chat, but if that's what you want to do, that's fine, by the way. But while we wait for questions, oh, Akachi, please go ahead. I have my questions as well, so after you, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Zoya, for doing this. This is very informative. I really appreciate it. I think my first questions, I've typed it in the chat, but I thought to like share it here. But I think my first question is, I know there are lots of companies who are like, why would I use AI when I have you? You know, you're a human being, you know, you give you like better results. But what are the ways you think that we can, you know, start introducing AI, you know, into our activities, or like talking to our superiors about it and saying that, oh, this is, you know, this is going to help me work a lot better and all of, you know, and all of that.
Yes. Yeah. So I think to start with, this is like a bottoms up approach, right? Like, if you start using it, because there's two things. You want your company obviously to invest in it so that you can use it for free, like anything in your tech stack. But there are free options as well for certain things that you can subscribe to without your company. ChatGPT is like a great starting point, I think. If you start using it and then having success with it, your company will start to be more open to it. So that actually happened at Gong. So this is an AI company. We're fully bought into AI. We sell AI. We use our own AI. But there weren't at the start, there weren't that many people using ChatGPT when it first came out. Like, again, I think we're all salespeople and we were like, oh, that sounds like a bit hard. That sounds like a technical thing. And some of us thought that and some of us didn't. And so the people who didn't were going in. Someone actually made a Gong ChatGPT bot, someone who has absolutely no coding experience, like not a developer. They just did it through prompts, right? By describing to it like what our ICP was and describing to it what kinds of leads they had, and then they wanted it to give them back suggestions for what they might say. And so they just did a really good job for themselves, like making it. And then they were sending emails and they were working. Like they would share in our company Slack, they'd be like, hey, like just got this prospect. Here's the email I used. I generated it with the help of the ChatGPT bot I built. And then they shared it, right? Like they didn't go to their boss and say, hey boss, like we need everyone to start using this, but they shared it with their colleagues who were like, hey, like that's cool that you did that. Like, can I see what you did here? And then enough time went by and everyone was kind of talking about it. And now everyone at Gong uses ChatGPT for something. I'm pretty sure, right? Maybe that's a little bit of hyperbole, but it got to the point, I'd say like really quickly in like 5 months maximum, that people were like, oh, ChatGPT, that's cool. Like, you know, I saw that in the news, to like, oh yeah, like ChatGPT it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much for the answer.
Okay, thanks, Zoya, for that. That makes a lot of sense. I have a question. He's saying, I don't know if it's a he or she, my apologies, but they're saying that they don't know if it's diverting from the theme, but they would like to know what is the suggested roadmap for someone who is studying software engineering, who is interested in tech sales. So what do you think?
Okay. I think you should come to the Uncapped community. But and I actually do, I do mean that in seriousness, right? You're here, so you're doing great already. But yeah, looking for people who work in tech sales already to add them to your network, and maybe even have like chats with them, like ping them on LinkedIn and see if they seem receptive. Some people aren't going to be receptive to it, right? Because you're a stranger, but actually you'll be surprised people in sales meet with strangers all the time. So
Yes.
I think that probably a lot of people will be open to it, especially if you get your value prop right? Like, don't just say, hey, can I pick your brain? But kind of share a little bit about your story, why you're interested and why you want to connect with them. And see where it goes so that you can kind of do like almost mini interviews with what it might be like if you worked in tech sales. And then looking for ways to learn more about tech sales. I think a really good one that's usually free would be podcasts. And then one that's like low investment to start with would be books. That's what I'd recommend.
Exactly. Thanks, Zoya. I was going to add that like she mentioned, Uncapped is a good community. Tech Sales Nexus is a good community as well for you to join in. And I need you to try leveraging communities. That has helped me a lot. And that's a good recommendation right there. For someone who has a background in software engineering, you may also want to explore sales engineering. It's an interesting field as well. So it's also sales, but it's just a bit more technical, especially with roles that has to do with integration, selling more technical products in cloud engineering, in cloud products, I beg your pardon, cybersecurity products, things like that. So you'd want to research about sales engineering so that you can see if it's something that, you're interested in. But yes, communities, by all means, you'd meet someone who would love to share something that would help you and nudge you in the path that you want to go. Okay, so if you have any other questions from the audience, any other questions from the audience before I go on and ask my questions?
Is it okay if I share the link to the Uncapped Slack?
Yeah, that's fine. Please go ahead.
Let me add
go
that
ahead.
as well.
Okay, while
I
we're
was,
waiting,
I was definitely going to do that when we're done, but yeah, I think
yeah,
this is a good
I
time
bet
to
you
share.
can share the link for TSN as well. That works. You can. I'm a part of
Okay.
both of them. You can join all the communities. Helen, please go ahead. Helen, your hand is raised. Do you want to unmute and speak, please? Hi, Helen. Maybe she's experiencing some technical issues, but please go ahead and unmute if you can hear me.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Helen. Welcome.
Yeah, yeah. You talked about we joining communities or podcasts and all that. Is it okay if you can share some with us, maybe on LinkedIn or other platforms, so that we'll be able to join and learn more? Because we are just trying to transition into tech sales. I'm in sales already, but I'm looking at building something bigger than what I'm doing. So is it okay if you can share with us so that we can just go join, learn, and grow from there?
Okay. Yeah, that works. That's actually a very good suggestion. So we'll share that. Zoya's podcast is Rep Matters. I listened to it. You should too. So I dropped it in the comment section as well. Rep Matters. And if you are a part of the Tech Sales Nexus community as well, we have a dedicated channel for just podcasts and books as well. So you might want to join the Tech Sales community to learn from. There is no limit to how much communities you can join, FYI. So join them and you'll be surprised. You'll learn a lot. Okay.
Especially if you're like asking, like I think the secret to like getting the most out of community is like reaching out to the people in there, like engaging when somebody does the introductions, messaging them right after they do the introductions, because that's probably like the time that they're most curious, or like they're like, do I belong here? Like anytime if you're looking to grow your network, as soon as you see someone come in to the TSN, right, like thing, to the Uncapped thing, to any other community, just click on that person's profile and just say, hey, welcome. What do you do? And see where it goes. The secret is not just joining, but actually like talking to the people.
True. I can attest to this as well. That's how I and Ty have a good relationship. We've been communicating ever since. I joined a community that he was a part of, and now I'm a part of Uncapped, and he's a part of TSN. So we're just, creating these networks, and I love it for all of us. Akachi, do you want to say something? Yes, please go ahead. Helen, you
Yes,
can drop your hand once you're done, or except you have another question.
so okay,
Go
so
on.
I didn't want to ask a question, but I just wanted to add to what you're saying and the benefits of community. The last role where I worked in, it was from a community that I joined called Women in Sales. So I joined the community, and I think 2 months into the community, somebody shared, oh, they have, this role open, and I joined. So that's how I
Yeah.
got that. The benefits of joining communities are immeasurable. And like Getru said, you can join as much as you can. I have tons of sales communities that I'm in. So please don't limit yourself to like a particular community and miss out on what you can get on the other.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Akachi. Ty has a question. Ty is saying, what are some creative ways to use AI for international business, actually?
Okay. Ty, I know you can't come off mute, but maybe you can just text a little clarifying. Like what elements specifically about international business are you curious about?
Okay. So while we're waiting for Ty to do that, Leonard's hand is up. Please go ahead, Leonard.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for putting this together.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, so I just ventured into cybersecurity sales. I've been in cybersecurity for quite a while now as cybersecurity engineer and in the GRC space. I got interested in, starting out in sales when I saw that there are not much people talking about the services rendered in cybersecurity and most of the products that are being produced there. So I decided to go into it, and as I was coming into it, I got a job straight, and I'm about to resume, but I'm just faced with a lot of uncertainties, and then trying to get answers to my question. That's how I found out this tech sales, and then this event happening today. So I just wanted to know. I want to ask Zoya that what are the best AI tools to use for cybersecurity sales? And considering that cybersecurity is very key on privacy, data rights, and the rest of that, which do you think is proper to use AI to carry out cybersecurity tasks, especially when we're talking about privacy and how secluded and very restricted it can be in most of the product and everything that concerns us. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not, are we saying service equity? Is that the field?
Yes, that's what I said.
Okay. To be honest, I'm not that familiar with service equities as a field, but you're saying that privacy is very important in this field, and that's kind of the concern around it.
Yeah, you're very correct.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll think about, I've sold to medical companies before, right? And so it sounds pretty similar. Like there's very high standard in terms of like how you can share customer data, how you can store customer data, things of that nature. Like at Gong, we ran into that often, but we were still able to work with them, right? Like in the US, we have something called HIPAA. I don't know if that's an international thing, but it's extremely strict privacy laws around like what you can share. So there's a couple things. If you're like thinking about using it for yourself, or if you're a buyer, like your company is evaluating, like say your company was evaluating Gong or competitors, it would come down to what that company's done to protect data. So there's something called SOC 1 and SOC 2, and it's related, this is extremely technical, but it's related to how companies secure data. And it's the most secure way that you can. Like it is what every hospital requires of their service providers. So you would just need to make sure that you were using a company, if you were going to like run private data through it, you would need to make sure that they were SOC 1, SOC 2. The other option, like say you wanted to use something that you weren't sure, like maybe it's like a $6 a month, like very kind of new thing that you can't tell, you know, how developed is this company? Is it a startup that probably might not have those? Then you would just want to like anonymize the data, right? Like you could still, you wouldn't be able to say, here's, you know, anything with personal identifying information,
yeah,
but you could
yeah.
say, let's just say Chat GPT, for example, right? I think anyone can use Chat GPT with confidence,
Sure.
but like I wouldn't share, like when I worked at Gong wasn't a public company yet. So there's information that we would learn about in all hands that we weren't allowed to tell our friends. I wouldn't have like written stuff like that in ChatGPT. I wouldn't be like, Gong just announced blah, blah, blah. Tell me what I should do with that information. I wouldn't do that. But what I could do is think, oh, okay, Gong is in XYZ situation. I've never been in that situation before. I wonder what happens next in a company when they approach this milestone. So then I would just say, when a company approaches X milestone, what's the appropriate response? Do you know what I mean? You kind of just either anonymize it or make it more general.
Anonymized, yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
Or if you're looking to invest in a company, right? Like when I say invest, I don't mean like on the stock market. I mean like your company wants to buy a technology for their tech stack, then they would just do that due diligence to make sure that they have those security compliance details.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
Yes. I saw,
Okay.
oh yeah, I was going to say, I saw what Ty said. Should I go back to that one?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, so yes, and I like Ty mentions that I have taught in Ireland as well. So we're talking about international business, specifically like cross-cultural communications. I think, again, ChatGPT is another great place to start because you can just, it's so broad. You can really train a specific bot for so many different things, or you can just ask random questions, but you should probably want to make a little bot. So I might make a culture bot. And there are different studies like in what's organizational business. There are like specific studies about how people communicate differently across cultures. I think there's 5. I'm not going to remember like the 5 key things, but one of them is like, is it high context communication or low context communication? I'll give the US versus like Japan, because I know those are 2 companies that are on very different ends of the spectrum. The US is a very low context communicating country. Japan is a very high context communicating country, which means in the US, we're pretty literal. We're in your face, we're straightforward, versus in Japan, there's a lot of like nuance, and it's important to know them, right? Like if you're going to go to Japan, you need to understand in this situation, these qualities are expected. In this situation, you know, here, this is, you know, again, like how it, I would need some training if I was going to do business in Japan, obviously, because aside from knowing high context versus low context, I actually don't think I know enough to give like specific examples of what makes it low context. And then there are other qualities on that spectrum as well. Patriarchy, I think, would be like another ranking, that top to bottom, bottom to top in terms of how decision making is made. So I think I've named 3 out of 5. But these are things that like scientists, behavioral scientists have studied. There's a lot of data on it. I don't know how old, like how far back this goes. But anything that's quantifiable, anything that has like academic research backing it is great for AI. AI is able to understand that very well. Speaking of high context, low context, I would argue AI operates best in like low context communicating. There's a lot of nuance that AI can't understand, but it can understand quantitative and to a certain degree qualitative research. And so that's probably how I would use it. I would look up the 5 qualities of like international communication. If you look up some phrase similar to that, you will find what I'm describing in terms of the different ways that different countries are ranked for how they communicate, or like what scale they're on for how they communicate. And I would go from there.
Hi, Ty. I hope that helps. Thank you so much, Zoya, for that insight. So my question is this. In your opinion, what emerging trends or advancements in AI hold the most promise for further change or improvement in tech sales in the near future, in your opinion?
I would say probably. Can you repeat the question, actually? Sorry.
So, in your opinion, what emerging trends or advancements in AI right now hold the most promise for us in tech sales in the next future?
Okay. Well, I'll start with my hypothesis, which is related to time. Because we know that time is the great equalizer. You can be extremely talented, extremely skilled, extremely knowledgeable, but if you're wasting your time, especially in sales, you're not going to have the results, right? You could be dealing with someone who, like, competing against someone who maybe like doesn't know as much as you do, who doesn't have the same tact and the same skill that you have. But if they're able to have, 5 out of the 8 hours of their day doing revenue generating activities, and this other person who really brings a lot to the table, but they're so busy doing other things, or like targeting the wrong prospect, or updating the CRM, doing admin tasks, that they only have 2 hours out of the day, right? Maybe they're going to have like the same results. So imagine if this person was able to actually like maximize their time, and they'd still be way up here, right? It would match their knowledge. So I think that technologies in tech sales that are going to allow reps to focus on revenue generating activities. There are reps today who are still entering data into the CRM manually. There are reps today who maybe don't even have a CRM, right? And they're entering it through like spreadsheets and things like that. But that's really time consuming. And a lot of the time it's might not even be accurate, like for all kinds of reasons. Recency bias, excuses that reps are making, or just like mistakes. So I'll give an example. Closed lost reason. Anytime when you're working in a CRM, usually anytime you lose a deal before you can complete the closing of it in the CRM, you need to say why the deal was lost. And the way it works for a lot of companies that aren't using any kind of AI is someone in the sales operations team decides what the categories should be. Close lost because of price. Close lost because of competitor. Close lost because no show or like went dead, right? There's all these things. And so sometimes what'll happen, like especially if a rep is really behind on updating the CRM, they'll just go and pick the easiest one. They'll be like, close lost competitor, close lost competitor, close lost competitor, because it was maybe a little bit of a competitive deal. Like someone was evaluating a technology. Obviously, they were looking at competitors. So that doesn't really tell you anything. So one, that rep had to go in and manually update that stuff. Two, it's probably not even as informative as it could be. And then let's add on to that there's a whole other team that needs to work with that data set. So I'm already, crying inside that this company had so many of their sellers waste their time, but then they have the people in sales operations who are going to waste their time as well, because they're trying to find insights. They're trying to tell the company what they need to do differently to scale their business, make sure they win deals next time, like whatever the objective is of this person in sales operations. Their whole job is to take the data, analyze it, and synthesize something helpful to their boss, to the CEO or to the CRO. But it's going to be wrong if the data in the CRM is wrong. So if we have an AI that solves for that, both makes it so that reps don't have to do it anymore. I'm describing a Gong use case also. Then the sellers get their time back. And now also anyone who's in leadership or in sales operations is going to have better data to work with. So they're going to be able to make better suggestions and better decisions. for the business. So I think that's probably, especially when it comes to like tech sales specifically, that's probably going to be the most important space for any kind of AI. Can they give sellers and can they give leadership time back so that they can focus on higher revenue generating activities and better
Activities.
decisions?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Zoya. Well said. I have one last question. I don't know if anyone in the audience still has a question, so get that ready while I'm asking mine. So my question is, how would the rise of AI change the skill sets required for successful salespeople going forward?
Yes. So this, I alluded to this earlier. I think that salespeople are going to need to become masters at prompting AI. So again, as we move forward with AI, we already see it happening. Anyone can use AI at this point, whether you know programming and coding or if you don't. And the reason you can do that is because the way that AI has been designed, because it's more sellable this way, it's been designed in a very nice package where you can get what you need by prompting it or like telling it what to do or asking it questions. So I'll give a really goofy example instead of doing a sales example. My boyfriend really enjoys watching Guy Fieri. He just thinks he's fun and he thinks his style is funny, like with the bleached hair and all that stuff. The restaurants that he pops into. I don't know if you guys know Guy Fieri, but he's just like he's a TV personality who goes to restaurants, and that's the whole show. And he did that like a long time ago before people were really doing that. And so he has like a very specific style of talking and dressing. And so he said to ChatGPT, he's like, I'm going to design a Guy Fieri bot. And he says, speak to me like you are Guy Fieri. I want you to be an expert in, and he gave it like a very silly thing, like something completely opposite from what Guy Fieri is an expert in. He's an expert in food. And that was like how it started. And then he continued to add like different layers onto it just to see like how silly of a bot could he make and to kind of test like how accurate it was. And so he had this bot that was now responding like, hey, like what, like these catchphrases that Guy Fieri would say, and then being an expert in like the field of science or whatever, and like giving like accurate information. So anyway, that's an exercise to do to just have fun, right? There's no like objective that you're trying to get out of it. So it doesn't really matter if you made a good prompt or a bad prompt. But when it comes to sales, for example, it actually matters a lot that your bot is able to spit out the information that you're looking for from it. But the way that it knows how to do that is because of what you fed it. So I'll give now like 2 real life examples. This is going to be from my work history or companies that I'm familiar with. Gong has something called smart trackers where it will listen into the call, it will like read everything, and it will flag things that you have included in the smart tracker. So a really challenging, or I'll do it really easy, a really easy smart tracker to build would be show me examples of any call that has next steps. And then you would define what next steps look like. Next steps are when a prospect agrees to meet again. Here's an example of a sentence of what a prospect might say. Next steps are when a prospect agrees to bring someone to the next meeting. Here are examples of what next steps looks like. And then it will start to understand what kinds of sentences people are saying when they're starting to get into the part of the call that's next steps. Another example with Hyperbound, you can talk to prospect clones, basically, right? People who sound exactly like your prospects, and you can practice your cold calling with them. The thing is, if you want to make a custom one, you have to tell it exactly what your prospect is like. So you could feed it a LinkedIn profile of someone who you know is in your ICP, who would be a great person to call. You can tell it things like, I want this person to be a parent and have 3 kids and they have a hobby of mountaineering, and like you can tell it all of these different things to make this chatbot come to life, right? Like to make it have all of these qualities that your prospect would have. But if you don't think deep enough to like make it a well-rounded prospect who you could build rapport with and who you could, you know, whatever those things might be, you can tell it if it's going to be rude, or you can say if you want the prospect to be, there's a really fun one that Hyperbound built for the Uncapped community. And it was rude, but it would flip. It was rude, but if you said something that was valuable, then it would become more curious and become a little bit more kind. That's like a real life behavior that prospects have when you, especially for a cold call. When you get on a cold call, many of them are rude and a lot of them do warm up if you say something that they care about. And then you have to define what it is that they care about. So the quality of the experience that you have with this chatbot, if it's going to be helping you or not, is going to be tied to how good your skill of training it, or what we would call like prompt creation, is.
Thank you, Zoya. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone has any other question before we wrap up for today. But top of mind, a lot has jumped at me, and I'm glad we had this conversation. AI is a thing. It's not just, you know, a catchphrase now in the tech industry. It's something that is becoming an indispensable part of our jobs. And even as tech sales enthusiasts, as professionals, we're not left out of it. And this conversation just solidifies that knowledge. So top of mind, AI is as good as the information you feed it. So Zoya just mentioned being able to prompt it right. What you feed the bot is what it'll give back to you, right? Regardless of whatever it is you're trying to achieve using an AI tool. Okay, so that stood out for me, and I'm taking that with me going forward. Zoya, could you be kind enough to share with us about the Aspiring Sellers event coming up soon? It'd be nice to have the members of this audience attend.
Yes. So it is hosted by, we were talking about community earlier. It is hosted by another community called Sisters in Sales. Uncapped is partnered with them for this event, and it's open to any woman of color. It is a virtual event with in-person activations. So the in-person activations are going to be in New York. That's a bit far for both me and for y'all. But all of the content, right, like the sessions and the seminars and things like that, are virtual. And I will send to you. Actually, I think I can drop it in the chat. Give me one moment. I just have to search my computer for it. I have free tickets that I got, complimentary tickets that I would love to share with this community.
Yes,
so I'm just going to
I actually took advantage of that, and I've registered already. From
amazing.
So I'm looking forward.
Good.
Oh, but your name is spelled Leonard right now. Okay, so he's saying his name is Leonarda. Do you mind editing your name so that we don't mispronounce it next time? Oh, for the tickets.
I'm wanting Zoya for the tickets.
I see. That's so
Zoya,
funny.
Are the men excluded totally? The men can attend at all?
It's closed for women. Yeah, anyone who identifies as a woman.
Okay.
But let me find.
I got it now. You know, I got the humor now. Someone mentioned something pretty sensitive earlier. Her name is Kunene. I really hope I pronounced that properly. She's saying, thank you so much for sharing all these insightful tips. Also, as a young Black woman, this is somewhat an emotional experience for me because I'm usually surrounded by people who cannot possibly relate to my experience identity-wise. Oh,
Yeah.
You see, that's why we're here. It's a community, right? Zoya is in the US and we are here in Africa. I am in Nigeria. Akachi is in Nigeria. A couple of us are here in Nigeria, and we can, you know, be a part of all of this and glean into each other's experiences, knowledge, insights. So it doesn't really matter who is around you. For me, it's never been about those around me. It's been about, who has what I need, and I reach out to them, regardless of who it is. The worst that can happen is you get a no, right? So please be a
Yes.
part of these communities. Which reminds me, everyone, please try to join the Uncapped community. That's Zoya's community. It's really insightful and it's really helped me so far. That was how I got to register for the Aspiring Sellers Summit for free, right? Other people would have to pay, I think, over $70 for that, the last I checked, but I got in for free, right? So let's all do that. And please join the TSN community as well, the Tech Sales Nexus community. That is Ian Akachi's community. We are giving out free information every day, podcasts, books to read, live sessions like this. And this is recorded, by the way. If you want, to reference it, you can join the community as well. We have a free resource channel where you can always go back and take a look at these things. We have a YouTube channel as well. Go on YouTube, watch some of the resources we put out on there and benefit from it. There's a lot of free knowledge, so much. There are no excuses. Thank you so much, Zoya. If we have no other questions, we can call this a day. And it's been a pleasure being in the midst of all of you. Thank you, Akachi. Thank you to each and every one of you that joined us today. Ty, thank you. Thank you, Leo. All right, please.
And I just dropped my.
Yes, please. I was going to mention that. Please connect with Zoya on LinkedIn. She is as receptive gets. So please reach out if you have questions, send a DM, and you'll get it answered as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks to everyone who joined in today. Bye, everyone. Bye, Akachi. Morgan.